Okay, we are reconvening from closed session to open session. Welcome to the Oroville City Council meeting of April 6, 2021. Calling this meeting to order. Where direction was given and no action was taken. Will you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Salute, pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God.
Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Got a second from Hatley.
Okay.
Councilmember Hatley. Apologize, sir.
That's my name. It doesn't bother me.
Oops. Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Okay, at this time, we're going to open the meeting up for public communication. At this time, it will be the hearing of non-agenda items. Speaking time is 2 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, we have several public speakers. Our first speaker is Steve Terry, and the next one will be Bobby O'Reilly.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I know that it's not on the agenda. I want to keep it before the issue. I'm still standing against the outsourcing of Oroville Fire Department to CAL FIRE. A point that I want to bring up, something that was not been in a lot of discussion, but that was brought up by Chief Messina, and that is that when employees retire from CAL FIRE after 20 years, they're entitled to lifetime medical. This is going to end up being another unfunded liability. It has not been addressed. When we look at the fact that Chief Messina said in his own presentation that if somebody is with Oroville Fire, I'll use an example, 10 years or 15 years, and then it goes over to CAL FIRE, they retire at 20 or 22, Oroville City is going to have to pick up the balance of that tab because they weren't with CAL FIRE that 20 years. That is another unfunded liability right there. It's going to raise the cost of this. I'm having trouble, and I'm not ignorant of finances. I'm having trouble seeing the financial gains of doing this anyway. Just right off the top, 5.2 million versus whether it be 3.2, 3.4, 3.6. I'm having a hard time seeing the financial advantage of this as it is, but then when you take on another unfunded liability, and we're not going to discharge those, the unfunded liabilities that we have right now. The term has been said that we will not continue to pile on, but we're not going to discharge. We're going to have that for many, many, many years to come. And I'm not so sure that we're going to even discharge even all of that anyway. And that part I don't know about. And so I won't go to that too much. I'll plead ignorance. But I think we really need to look at this, and it seems as though many people have their mind made up this.
Time is up, sir.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just answer some of the questions that were just put forward. That is true. We are going to have that medical difference. I mean, if an employee worked here for 10 years and then transferred to CAL FIRE, we would have to pick up that 10 years toward medical retirement if they were within 20 years of being retired. If a person worked here, hypothetically, let's just take somebody comes to work for us who's 22 years old, they retire when they're 55. The city has no liability for that because there's adequate time to earn that medical leave. That is one of the things, and that's what we've been trying to communicate, maybe not effectively to people, is that we have to look at. We have to evaluate what those numbers are. It isn't that we don't know about that or we've tried to conceal that. We don't know what those are. You don't figure those out until CAL FIRE does their evaluation and brings those back to you. That's why we don't have a negotiated agreement yet, because we don't know what that number is. That number could be staggering and would kill it. It's a one-time payment. It's not unfunded liability forever that you carry with you. You would have to pay a one-time payment on that, and you're finished with that. So that is there. The numbers are, so we're in clarity with this, is that if you add El Medeo, which we do not have control of that district, it's $5.2 million. Fire service from CAL FIRE for the city of Oroville is $4.2 million. We are currently paying $3.9 million. Those are the numbers. That is what the issues are. We're still vetting this out. We're getting information. I would encourage Pastor Terry to come to the next council meeting, because our bond people are going to be here. That will help explain the PERS thing and give us it'll be our bond people that will help us all understand and make sure that we're making the right decision regarding our PERS, what that means to us in the future. So they'll give us some more clarity on that. So we have that, because what the city's looking for is the best possible answer. And, we need the little bit of space to gather that information. No final decisions have been made, contrary to what some may say. We are still gathering that information, and it will have to come back to this body to make that final decision.
Our next public speaker is Bobby O'Reilly, and then Bill Spear.
Hello, good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. It's wonderful to be back in the chambers for a meeting. Actually get to sit, enjoy the atmosphere. It's wonderful. Things are opening back up. Proud of Oroville. I wanted to say hello. It's been a while. Good to see all of you guys. I also would like to take this opportunity on my time during public comment to send out condolences. Those of you that may not have known, I'm sure everybody does. Oroville resident Tatiana Sunshine Duggar was located deceased in Siskiyou County. She was a resident of Oroville until she recently moved to Southern California not so long ago for a short period of time before she went missing. So at this time, for the duration of my time, I would like to take a moment of silence to honor Tatiana Sunshine Duggar. Thank you. May Tatiana rest in peace, and may her family get justice.
Our next speaker is Bobby O'Reilly, and then Mitch
Clerk,
Brown.
I'd like to say something about that, because apparently I'm for some reason, the center of this thing with some people on social media. I want to be really clear here that I have been close friends with her mother and grandmother for 35 years. And her name is Alejandra Terrescence Sunshine Haltewinger. And I find it very offensive that people accuse me of not caring because I'm not acting like a fool on social media. I don't make videos. I don't dance around with a blunt behind my ear and tell people what losers they are. My moves, my feelings, my actions are very precise and very to the heart. You have no idea how involved I've been in this investigation from the night she went missing. I know exactly who she is. I knew exactly where she lived. So I want it really clear for these fools on social media Pull it together, because now you've got my children being threatened by your activists that are following your foolishness. Got my little 16-year-old daughter who's sitting home doing her homework, playing with her puppies, people threatening her. Well, I'll tell you what, you cowards. Come threaten me. Don't hide behind the keyboard. Leave that little girl alone to make up stories about my son who's out deployed in the middle of the Pacific Ocean fighting for his country, to say that I covered up DUIs he had. The kid never had a DUI in his life. It's absolute filthy lies. Why don't you stack up your accomplishments instead of stacking up your lies? Because I'm sick of it. You want to be taken serious? Put together a format, put together an event where you have a speaker that can speak clearly without a blunt behind his ear. Make us all look foolish. I've spent the last couple of days with her mother and grandmother. And I'm going to tell you what, they don't even know who this guy is that's making these videos. Didn't have any idea who he was. Certainly never gave him any authority to collect money. So think about that next time you're following who's cool on Facebook. And they're very offended. Very offended. And she told me that as soon as she can get herself together enough to speak about it, she'll say that herself. So, yes, absolutely. Rest in peace, Alejandra. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Our next speaker is Bill Spear, and then Mitch Brown.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, I would like to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your leadership. Sorry that your family has to go through that. Thank all of the City Council for their leadership and see all the positive improvements in our city, stuff getting done, trees being trimmed and sidewalks fixed and roads paved, and I can see a difference, and I just want to thank you. And also I would like to pray. Grateful that we pulling out of the plague and into the orange and move in the right direction. Father, we ask that you would continue to be with the leaders in our city, our new city council. We pray an anointing upon them, that you would use them to deal with the tough issues and to guide us in the right direction. It says in your word, if we lack wisdom, ask God, who gives generously to all. And I just ask for a generous portion for our leadership here, and that we'd not grow weary and continue to bless our city, and put us a city on a hill, a light on a shelf. We do pray for the family of Tatiana and for healing, and we pray for justice, that whoever did it, that you would find him and bring him to justice. We pray for our police department, and we thank you for them and their hard work, our fire department, and all the public servants that have persevered through this virus, that continue to show up to work, continue to lead the way for our city. Thank you for City Hall being opened again, and I pray that this is just the beginning as we get to the spring, that we'd begin to open up and feel safe and prosper and all the things that you have for us. In Jesus.
Our next speaker is Mitch Brown and then Kay Castro. Or Mike. Mike Brown. Okay. Sorry.
Different Brown.
Sorry. I was trying to read your handwriting.
Yeah. Mayor Reynolds, members of the council, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I wanted to tell you a little bit about a medical emergency I reported this morning. And it's a good example of why I'm a proponent of regional fire protection in whatever shape it would take. I was going up from Rayleigh's to my home in the Brookdale neighborhood, and I saw a man on the sidewalk face down. He fell from his wheelchair at least, but he wasn't moving. He was laying there between Shear Memorial and the vacant buildings where the burger place used to be. He was just laying flat on the ground. Everybody was driving by. So I whipped into the mortuary and went and checked on him. He wasn't moving. He was too big for me to manhandle. But I did notice as his little dog barked at me that his leg was kind of twitching and it was pink. So I knew he had a pulse, and he kind of groaned when I yelled at him, but he couldn't respond. So I called 911, and the dispatcher from the police dispatch said they'd send a fire engine. I asked if they would send an ambulance. They said, yeah, they would send an ambulance too. And because I'm an old firefighter, I started my stopwatch. That's what we do, Dave. The fire engine arrived second. Not unusual. The medics are right up the hill, up at Wagon Wheel Market. They arrived in 4 minutes and 16 seconds. The fire engine was probably busy. There's a lot of call stacking or redundant calls. The fire engine arrived in 9 minutes and 36 seconds. You didn't have a different outcome for the patient. The medics arrived. We have a regional EMS system. There were 4 paramedics and 2 paramedics, 1 EMT, because the supervisor was there from Chico for some reason. So we have this regional EMS system. We forget that it's regional, but it's a combination in-law hospital and a private ambulance provider. Works really well for us. Now, meanwhile, we don't have. Sorry.
Your time's up, sir, but I'm sorry. I'd like to hear the rest of your story.
Okay. Well, absent regional.
It's not a controversial item. It's not a, I'd just like to hear
I
it.
want you to know that the guy was okay, too, in the end.
Thank you. That's part I want to get to.
His dog's named Coco, but right up the hill by Wagon Wheel Market's a county fire engine. It would have arrived right now at the same time a fire engine from Station 1 arrived at the same point. And as congestion increases, response times get slower going from the inside of the city out. Meanwhile, we know we have a county engine in Thermalito already carrying our water. There's one in Palermo that reaches much of the very far south city industrial area very rapidly. And there's one at Kelly Ridge that responds into my neighborhood, absent Station 3 Almadeo, and would be first or second to arrive based on the time of day. So that's an example of what you can get in regional protection as a value added, because you won't see a fire engine in Palermo being built to you, a fire engine in Kelly Ridge being built to you, but ultimately you will see a fire engine in Thermalito either gone or being built to you, because you only need to look to North Chico, Station 42's closure, when the city of Chico had a similar situation over time through annexation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I would like to say I received your letter a while back, and it was the most well-informed, articulate letter I've seen to date. And you, sir, know your business. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kay Castro and then the cameraman.
I need to be taller. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. I first off want to thank those of you I've seen around over the weekend, Wildflower Festival, historic tour downtown. Very excited to see your faces and to see you there and supporting our events. I too have a story. I didn't know I had it until Mr. Brand spoke. I came out of my building to a man who was comatose, lying in the foyer of the business. And I did. I too called 911. I didn't time it, but it was a very, very quick response to downtown. And I am going to put it all on the line right here, and I'll be honest. I called 911. They came. I see police around town more often now. I'm seeing fire department. I do not want to make this an issue other than I am completely supportive. I'd love to see that POP team. I'd love to see more resources going to our police department as well as the fire issue. So I just want to thank all of you for that extra effort and time that you're doing. I had one quick question. The posting for the police chief says this position is the department head over police and fire, but the job description doesn't necessarily have anything to do with fire. Could just be I misreading it, but I am curious on the front page, head over police and fire, but the job description doesn't have anything regarding fire service. My second thank you to all of you is for the Measure U meeting, April 15th, 10 to noon. Thank you, staff, for including the public and figuring out how to Zoom it or get us access. I really wanted to thank the staff for that extra effort. Thank you.
Our next and final speaker on non-agenda items is the cameraman.
Good evening, Oroville City Council. Just to touch on the chief of police issue, is I understand the mayor has done, from what I see, 2 interviews on the news. The first one stating that he was, and I'm very well aware that he's an at-will employee. Let's just get that out of the way. The first interview, he mentioned that and the fact that the city decided to go into a different direction. The other interview I saw afterwards, a follow-up the next day, was that it was a personal issue. Didn't go into what that may be, but I have a little bit of a speculation on that. Could it be potentially that none of my complaints that I filed with the police department were responded to, and that's a factor in this decision? Was it potentially because of what William Beaver's done down in federal court and filed documents and has caused a stir? Is that potentially why our chief is out of a job? Could it be because of this problem, some sergeant I keep hearing about from people, and there's a video allegedly of him in a not professional manner at a party with some people, passed out, drunk on a couch, and a whole bunch of other stuff about him, and really some very unpleasant things about that sergeant. He even caused allegedly all these dispatchers to quit because of the way he treated them. Could it be because that a certain officer has gotten into a wreck with the city property, you know, our city's a police vehicle twice, and CHP, and there's really been no recommendation as how to correct his issues on that? Could it be any of these combination of things? But whatever it may be, he obviously wasn't going in the direction the city wanted to go. That's why he's out of a job, because if he was going in that direction, why would there be a need to go a different direction without him? So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. It wasn't a personal issue. It was a personnel issue. It's not, we can't speak on personnel matters. And that was simply my point. It was, nobody was indicating that there was an issue. That's just language that we have to use with the press. So, is that all of our speakers?
Mr. Mayor, that is the final speaker on non-agenda items.
Okay, at this time, we're going to close public communication and the hearing of non-agenda items. I'm looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar, and Councilmember Hatley wished to pull item number 5 from the consent calendar.
I move that we adopt the consent calendar exempt item number 5.
Second.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Councilmember Hatley, you pulled item number 5. Do you wish to speak on it, sir?
Yes, thank you. On this, I know when we bought, I guess I'd be talking to the city administrator. When we bought the vehicles and the unit that goes on, it's a foam unit for the airport type thing. And I'd mentioned before about attaching that to a trailer rather than tying that vehicle up. That would just give us an extra vehicle that anybody could use. Plus, that trailer could be pulled by any city vehicle. They could just back up to it and hook onto it and go. Because I know that our police department has hitches on the SUVs and the other vehicles that in an emergency where maybe somebody couldn't get to that, they were tied up, that would just free up a fire department personnel, and we could have maybe a police officer or public works or whoever bring that unit to where they needed it if they were already on scene, or it would be faster. And I was just curious if
Councilman Halley, that's an excellent question. Yes, that was considered. I think part of the consideration in this is that this vehicle is not, this CAFS unit that we've purchased can be used for quick strike, multiple type of activities, which means that you could see this particular piece of equipment respond to a small fire, a dumpster fire, different things like that. And it's not just limited to an aircraft fire at the airport or something like that. So we did evaluate that. We looked at the cost of what the trailer would be. Trailering this behind an SUV from the police department, they just don't have the gross or the tongue capacity or the towing capacity to tow something like this. So after looking at it with Chief Tins and his crew evaluating it, it was determined that between the cost of the trailer and the cost of the bed were somewhat similar, and the additional use that they would get from this as a quick strike vehicle much better served the community. So I would ask Chief Tins if he could add anything to that. He is truly the fire expert.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Great question. So the main concern is emergency response and driving code 3 with a trailer. I didn't think it was very safe, and the flatbed's going to allow us to permanently mount it. This bid includes that, secured, mounted, and we intend to use, as Mr. Legrone said, it in multiple functions. So we may be able to free up an engine on, say, a grass fire and have that pickup drive down into an area where maybe an engine can't get to, and use that foam system to mop up, use less water, heavy foam. But the main reason was a safety concern, because we don't have anywhere else to keep it other than Station 1. And we also have to anticipate if an aircraft was to go down, it may not just go down at the airport. It could go down, as we've seen in the 90s, I believe, where the U-2 went down at the Mercury Register, and that housed there and responding code 3 throughout the city just seemed a lot more safe versus hauling a trailer around.
Okay, I was just curious because
Yeah.
I hadn't heard, and I was just curious what the reason was. That's
Well, and I
all.
think just so the community knows too, filling this CAVS unit is very inexpensive. We bought one that, Chief Tins could update the council on what the cost of the foam product is compared to what we were doing previously. So you'll probably see a lot more use of this piece of equipment than you have in the past.
Yeah, so this unit's going to cost roughly about 200 gallons of foam. The cost of that is a 5-gallon pail of AFFF foam versus the older system. I won't get into all the details, but Purple K and AFFF mixed was like 450 gallons of each, and it cost in the upwards of thousands and thousands of dollars. So we were real hesitant to train with it and even pull the trigger on it, because it was very expensive unless we absolutely had to. This system will, with $200, we can go out and train a lot more frequently with it and get a lot more familiar with that system and utilize it a lot more. And unfortunately, just to kind of cover why we need the flatbed, we utilize the F350 pickup that will hold that weight. And it just quite didn't fit in to the bed, really wouldn't latch and close like the manufacturer said that it would. So, but unfortunately, that is what it is. But I think the flatbed is actually going to work out better. It's going to have tool compartments on the sides. We can carry more foam, lock our tools up. and it'll be a lot more secure. And the company that will be installing it, if approved, is going to secure it down. And it'll be able to come off if we needed to take it off for repairs or something like that, so.
Thank you.
Chief, before you take off, Councilmember Pittman wishes to speak.
Yeah, I wanted to add to this too, because I got a chance to see it when they demonstrated and did the initial training on it. Part of the problem here is we were replacing an old pickup, 1974 pickup with a foam unit, and that was the original concept. And then when they got the thing here and it says, oh man, you can use this for a whole wide variety of things. And then, oh, by the way, the old pickup didn't have any room for any hand tools or, necessities, bolt cutters, those kind of things. So it was kind of a evolution of new equipment and a demonstration of that and seeing, I think it makes a lot of sense. In fact, I think the truck bed and all that's a vendor here in town, as I recall.
Yeah.
So we're getting it all done locally. It's kind of nice to see that kind of work done, and it really makes it a lot more efficient and effectiveness. So thank you. Any other questions on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have one public speaker. Kay Castro.
On number 5, I really meant number 9.
Okay.
Having no more speakers, I'm looking for a motion to adopt item number 5 of the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor.
we have to wait.
Yes, sir. I was going to advise you that number 7 and number 8 are time-specific public hearings.
Absolutely. I was going to recommend we go to item number 9 of regular business. Mr. Mendez, are you ready for your presentation, sir? Mr. Well, you guys, with them masks on, it's hard to tell you apart.
We have passed out a site plan and now it's on the screen for review. Councilmember Hatley actually reminded me that we had a very similar plan that was submitted in 2012 by Snyder. That lapsed, never pursued it. This is 12.9 acres owned by the city. I think it's a critical piece. I'm very supportive. After we hear everything, that we direct staff and the city attorney to begin negotiations. Obviously, we're just at the conceptual phase, but this is the piece at the freeway in Montgomery. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mark.
Okay. Well, we've obviously it's been empty. I don't know. We're been in town. I live here, of course, and we build here, and we've seen it empty for. In researching it ourselves, that place, the last time it's had activity has actually been over 60 years. So, before I was born. So it's been empty for a long, long time. And it's an eyesore, and it needs to be built out. We're building quite a few things in town, and there's been a lot of false starts on this project, I think that Tom mentioned. And I've dealt with Leo, Don Rusk, Don Ever. I mean, all this has been going on for quite a few years. That this thing has been sitting there. And yeah, the concept is pretty much the same, I think, in reference to Mr. Hatley's comment. But really, and that concept is just that. It's going to change. It's going to be a piece of moving work, depending on who we can get and who we get to come in. But a key component that probably won't change is there's going to be housing. If you see in the apartments in there, they're going to have to be in there to be able to make this a financially viable project. We're putting those facing Feather River Boulevard, if you look at the drawing. But those are going to be, the existing building there is actually what was the Work Training Center. That building there, they'll have to be rehabbed also, and then the corners, as you can see. But who we can attract in terms of extended stay is what we're looking at. We're targeting there, a grocery store, some type of specialty grocery store, and of course other, and then there'll be restaurant pads, 4 different restaurants that would go there. Obviously, the end game for this is for housing and sales tax. I mean, it needs to be a generation. It's been nothing but a costing factor to the city at this point. And it's going to take a tremendous amount of effort and a tremendous amount of money to make it happen. So, just enough, we've done our own phase 1 reports all around it because we just purchased the work training center building that's there. And now we've done all the phase 1 and the environmental. That's where we understood when the last time there was actually activity on that site. And like I said, it was over 60 years ago. So I think the concept's pretty straightforward. If anybody has any questions, I'd be love to answer them.
I'd like to, I don't know if I'm going to get what I want, but my vision for that was to see that existing building go away and all of it to flow together. But I understand the cost. You already have a great deal of costs into this, and but all of your projects around town, I'm happy that you're here and doing what you do, because you have taken a lot of our dilapidated buildings and turn them into nice structures with viable businesses. And I just really appreciate all of your efforts. And I think I met you when you first came to town, and you were going full speed and still are about 15 years later. So I just appreciate everything you do, Mr. Mendez. And I trust you. I know that if you say it, you're going to do it, because it's been that way with every project we've seen so far. So I really appreciate you showing interest in this.
Well, I appreciate the words. I mean, the existing building there is, just for public record, we're paying $700,000 for it. Things are expensive.
Yes.
Just for the existing building there.
Yes, I'm
and the
I'm
cost
aware.
of replicating things and bringing stuff in for structures and permits and sewage and everything else that's going to require for that, it's millions of dollars here. It's before we ever broke ground.
I understand it. Before the idea and the development happened, I think there would have been a better deal on that building, but the word got out, and but I'm happy that you're interested,
Well,
sir.
Unfortunately, the way, with not just COVID, but the cost of materials and the cost of everything is spiked and everything is out of control.
I'm a builder too, sir.
Yeah, so
I'm aware.
It's not good. And we had, initially on this, we dealt with, Leo was involved in a lot of this stuff when we first started talking about this. But it's quite a project, and it's not something that's going to happen. And I've had several meetings with Tom, Don, Leo initially on this project, because it's going to take some time. And we get the product mix, and then of course working an agreement that is, workable for both the city and for us, because we take a lot of financial risk, not just a piece of land.
And one of the things we don't want to repeat what's happened with 60 years of history. So one of the things that we're insistent on is timelines that's why the conceptual drawings and the permit process is all of these things going on to make sure that you start your construction so we can get moving on this, because we don't want it sitting there for
60 years.
60 more.
Another 60
I don't think I have 60 left.
Well,
Thank goodness.
Realistically, and we've had these discussions with Don Nevers and Tom Lando, and then where's about, how long is it going to take you to break ground? And realistically, you're probably looking at 30 months before you actually break ground by the time you go through planning. Dealing even with PG&E right now, it's taking us over a year to get power to a project. So, there are some realistic, concerns and timing, and hopefully the cost of materials is going to correct itself.
Right.
In terms of what's going on.
I would like to take the public comments first, and then comments from the dais, please.
Good.
Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, I have 2 public speakers. I have Bobby O'Reilly and then Kay Castro.
Thank you again, Council. I am very pro building, growing our community in any way, shape, or form. New growth, retro, other old buildings to bring them up and fill them up, so forth and so on. I love the idea of bringing new things in, shopping centers, hotels, living structures. Here's my only problem. My problem is, and it's not such, I don't like to use the word problem, I'd just like to see as a community member that takes care of property that adjoins other properties. When somebody wants to go into deals and build more things, I think that the things that are existing already should probably be worked on first. And what I mean by that is there's quite a few vacant properties that are owned right now by Mr. Mendez that need some attention. And attention, by attention, I mean the allowing of the illegal dumping, the illegal camping, that sort of thing. And there's not a whole lot of attention being given to that by those responsible for the properties. I manage a property that's next door to one of these properties. I get the overflow that I have to take care of, and I'm there daily taking care of it. I had a gun pulled on me the other day on the adjoining property, and they just go right back on the neighboring property because they know they won't be kicked off. So when people want to come and grow, that's great, but please take care of what we have and then grow. Thank you.
I'd like to comment on that because I've been involved with eradicating a lot of these properties as well. And Mr. Mendez is not allowing anything. It's simply a situation where at times we get overran with, there are the unhoused and then there are criminal transients. And I would think, Mr. O'Reilly, that you would be able to differentiate when someone pulls a gun on you that they are a criminal transient. And Mr. Mendez does not allow any of that. In fact, when he was notified, he was vehement about it and actually went into action and put a whole berm around his property so they couldn't bring any more vehicles in. So your time is up, sir. Did you?
I have just a couple more things. I would like to clarify the allowing part. By allowing, what I mean by that is, yes, the berms were put up. The berms have been knocked down in some areas where people have been able to drive through for quite some time. I personally know that the individuals responsible for the property have been notified to let them know that people are camping there multiple times. The people who are camping on the property at this time have been there for months upon end. It's become like it was before. I remember the time you're talking about when all the motorhomes and trailers and stuff were in there, and it was eradicated. It was taken care of and the berms were put up. However, we're getting right back to a similar situation. People with kids in there, people with cars, motorhomes, and so forth and so on. My issue with that, the whole point is that notification was given, hey, this is what's going on, and the failure to, I don't want to say failure, but hey, you're responsible for a property, let's just all work together to clean it up, and that hasn't been seen. So I just wanted to say, before we move on with helping build another site, let's take care of what we have now. Thank you.
Well, and if that is your business, sir, if you manage properties and eradicate homeless camps and that, maybe you can talk to Mr. Mendez about managing his.
I've tried.
Okay.
No interest. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kay Castro.
Good evening again. I'm not going to take you 60 years back. I'm going to take you back to 1854. In 1854, Captain Byrd and Jacob Morris secured title to most of the placer mining claims and laid out the town in 1855, promptly selling lots to enthusiastic buyers. Ophir was rechristened Oroville and became the county seat, following a spirited election in 1856. My father, I'm reading from my father's book, yes. Today, Oroville is a progressive community that attracts new investments and families on a regular basis. Because of our natural resources, and in my view, the natural resources are our people and the caring people who are here today, not the ones that are being maliciously rude, and I apologize for any of that that's going on. We're here right now, and we trust that you will ensure that Oroville will continue to recognize its pleasing contrast between past and present, its delicate balance between human enterprise and natural wonders. And yeah, my voice is shaking because it's that important to me and this town, and I am very, very grateful for the improvements that are being made. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that is the last speaker on this item.
Okay, Councilmember Pittman wishes to speak on this item.
Go ahead, Tom.
I just wanted to add a few things because it occurred to me as I was sitting there. We have talked to a number of people about this property, and we've had many starts on it. But the point I wanted to make is if you decide to proceed, what would happen is staff, along with the city attorney, would work with Mr. Mendez on an agreement which would come back to you. So I wanted to emphasize that you get to see this again. Thank you.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, thank you. I would just, maybe Mark can come up and answer some of the questions that I'm sure the council are going to offer up. My question is, do you have any intent from any companies that or interest letters from companies that may locate?
I would say probably half the properties in there, we would build ourselves.
Okay.
I don't need interest from those. I mean, what we're looking at in terms of housing and stuff in there is we need something that's going to support that project. So we're going to need we need instant income. So we're going to roll the bones on the first triage.
Okay.
But what's going to happen is we are going to actively go out there and pursue these guys, but without securing the property and just quite honestly, I can't go spend $1 million and go out there and put a guy on the road and say, hey, let's go see if we can attract these people in there without having rights to the property until we have it done. Because just to get where we're at right now, I spent 20 grand.
Yeah.
So just to get
and that's part of what my question kind of led to, is that you would plan to build the properties and then lease out to vendors that would come in.
We would hopefully in the end we would lease out to them. We would plan on building it. They would become tenants. I'm sure we're going to come across some situations where they want to own that. We would sell them the pad.
Right.
But it would be under the restriction that we sign up with when we draft our agreement saying this is the type of, approved uses and it's just a lot farther to go, even in terms of, the aesthetics of the property, all the building stipulations that we're going to have.
Sure. In terms of apartments, do you have an idea of how many units you're have in mind?
Right now, our first, if you look at your first pass on the map right there, that's 38 units.
Okay.
And what that is that's actually, we're doing ground floor parking, and we do have elevations of them and designs and all that done already. But that's ground floor parking so that we don't have anybody, their cars will all be secured and under locked. So when they go in, they'll be in through a fence gate and lock. And the fact that that property is under cobble like most of Oroville is.
Right.
Very difficult to excavate out. So we're going to build the patio, build that down below so we only have simple excavation there.
Good idea. And I think the mixed use of the property with residential and apartments is a great idea. It makes it more.
The hotel site there is would be an extended stay to be built out to handle boats and all that stuff for storage and that. But it would obviously utilize it's going to be shifted back actually than what the architect has there.
Right.
So they could utilize the view of the river.
Great idea.
So that we could go that way.
Good use. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you.
Sure.
For the apartments, do you have a concept on what price point you would have those at? Low, medium?
Well, price point, we obviously like to make them where they're enough affordable, but the issue is going to be right now our price point is really up in the air with the cost of materials. I mean, it's really going to be is we have to functionally see what we can build them for and whether it's going to be built out of steel or wood, depending on what's happening in this environment, because it's a really moving target.
Thank you. My next question is a personal preference, I guess. The hotel would be specified as a hotel, not a motel, and have interior room access?
No, this is going to be an extended stay. So when you say interior room access,
So some motels have access to each individual room from the exterior, whereas most of the time hotels have access from an interior hallway.
so there'll be access from an interior hallway.
Thank you. And then I know that it's just a mock-up for these restaurants. Do you have a mix or a concept idea on what style of restaurants those would be? Would those be fast food, fast casual, or dine-in, or a mixture thereof?
Well, the floor plan can change, but I mean, it's going to be on, we would obviously like some national tenants that would be going in there for our quick serve on the corners, you know, because of the freeway access. But I'd be lying to tell you that we know exactly who that is. We know, and we do operate restaurants, and so we're very familiar with them. So we're going to see what fits best for us.
Okay. For me, because this project is the gateway into our historic downtown, it's important that it reflects our historic component of downtown and is reflective of our community instead of more commercial feel.
Right. I think that would have to be addressed with Tom and done in that in terms of, you know, what we want architecturally for this thing for the whole project to look like. And we're open. We're not set on locked on anything there. It's just more what's going to look good for the community.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah. My hat's off to you, likewise, as the mayor's already expressed. We certainly appreciate all the efforts and what you've done and the asset and value added to our community. I'm very excited about, you know, just the concept of doing something with that piece of property. And I love what you already said about the views, because there are certainly a lot of natural assets with that piece, you know, just a beautiful view of the river, you know, with the elevations and all of that. I would just add my comments in that I think this really has the potential to reach that mid, maybe even slightly upper level customer, you know, a tenant, not necessarily low income. Because I just think that where this sits, I think that there's just a lot of opportunity. And then also, I think it's important to collaborate with the parks, Feather River Parks. And then there's also plans, you know, with that whole nexus of the trail. There's just a lot of value-added features that I think would be very attractive. Think about our hospital coming online and the need for housing for those individuals, maybe some that traveling professionals, that type of thing. I just think that the opportunities here are boundless, and I'm just, my hat's off, and I applaud you, and I really think this is going to be an amazing opportunity for Oroville to up its game, and I just thank you very much. And how about OSB at $45 a sheet right now? $9 last year. Holy smokes. So
tell me about
you
it.
got a lot.
We're actually building multiple houses right now in town, and it hurts.
Yeah, I was a general contractor in my other life, so I just a habit to watch the wood prices, and I'm just like blown away. So
there is a lot. When speaking of the river, there is a lot of still research and dealing, because that falls under, you know, the Corps of Engineers also, I believe, and I've dealt with Leo on that. I think we talked initially, because we're looking at how do we orientate as much as we can over the river. So, for example, where the shopping center shows on the plan there now, that very well may be office and even maybe housing above that, apartments that looks onto the river, something that we can utilize. So that we don't want to build something that's going to shut that river off. We need to utilize that view. Just depends how close we can get it, how we impact that trail that's there, and utilize the elevation so we can see down in that river, because it's not in a flood zone. So there's a lot of opportunity. But I said before we go down that path, there's a great deal of effort needs to be, you know, put onto that and come back. This is pretty rudimentary plan, but you definitely want to utilize the river because it's important.
Thank you.
Councilmember Goodson.
I recall thank you so much for wanting to step up to the plate and create something positive and unique in our community. When I envision this, I envision an upscale development on a riverfront property. And I was thinking back, if I could recall the initial design, did it not have a restaurant? I see that there's approximately 5 spaces for restaurants. I don't see one that's overlooking the water.
No, that's a good point, and it really comes down to is that most of the stuff that we'll see initially would be the actual front pad stuff that's going to be for quick serve to utilize the freeway access. But like you mentioned, once we've defined how close we can get to that river, what can we do, it's the perfect location for that. And so, thank you. My next question is in regards to the apartments, and I was thinking of waterfront properties
in various cities that I've been in, it's usually condos. And so I want to know, did you have that conversation with yourself and others in regards to apartments versus condos?
Well, I think we were looking more for apartments than we were for condos, and I don't think honestly we will get the condos for that cost, and construction and square footage would not be they'd be pretty cost prohibitive at that point there for the amount of square footage that we're going to take for them and the mix. And then I don't know if the condos. Again, I'd be lying to say we need to explore the different possibilities, what's going to fit best, and how do we utilize that view of the river and the access to the river, and what can we access to the river across that walkway. And I think we looked at several different parcels, and actually there's parcels across from the Ford garage that have the same, that I think, Leo, that we discussed before, how do we access the river across those paths that are going there.
Thank you. And so one other comment in regards to the restaurants, I was thinking, what would it be? Franchises? Would it be unique?
Well, I think we'd like to have some of the local flavor there, and then of course, it's going to depend on on a national scale. We want people that are financially stable. So I mean, that's going to.
So I'm just going to throw this out because sure. when I go to other places to vacation,
yes,
I look for waterfront. It's relaxing, but I also look for somewhere where I can dine in a formal atmosphere as well, a high-end dining, which will of course attract what the population and the audience that we would like to see come into Oroville.
We definitely need it in the town. I agree with you. I mean, this is the existing building there, the Work Training Center. That was the original. I don't know. That was before my was
Branding Iron
Steakhouse.
Yeah,
was there for quite a while.
Yeah.
So
I was a dishwasher.
You were a dishwasher there. That explains a lot, right?
And I mowed his lawn.
Thank you so much for
I just
your
remind
answers.
council again that all we're asking for at this point is the ability to negotiate with Mr. Mendez. It will come back, and certainly if you have ideas, please share them with staff.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hatley.
Thank you. And this will be, as far as EDUs for this, and I'm wondering about our line that runs down by the river, I guess, is where it's running, and they're just putting the street in now. I hate to, if the line is.
I believe that one, Councilman Hatley, goes down Safford to Fifth Avenue and intercepts there. Because I remember previously we talked about that line most likely will have to be upsized to handle this development.
Okay, I was just kind of curious because I know there's going to be with a hotel and you know, different things here with these housing developments, and plus with the restaurants. I mean, there's going to be quite a bit of ADU flow through there. So I was just curious how our lines were looking. I know we've cameraed them, and
yes, sir. I remember when Schneider. Can't remember the name of the company, but it was Mr. Schneider's company that came in as the developer. Some of the conversations that surrounded that was upsizing that line. Because I believe it's I think it's a 6-inch line that goes through there now and services Safford. So we're going to have to upsize it to pick up this large of a development.
Yeah, and depending on what else goes there, if we have, I know later on in our agenda we have some other stuff going to happen. So I'm just curious if, you know, if we're already in the thought process of that as far as the line, if we're going to have to upsize it and how we're going to accomplish that.
Yes, sir. When we get to the point where we have an agreement with Mr. Mendez and he has a more solid plan, then we will get with our engineer and start on that right away, because that is going to be, you know, Mr. Mendez needs 30 months to get out of the ground. We're going to need probably the same amount of time to get that pipe upsized.
Right. Okay, I was just curious, because I know we had some problems down in that area, you know, as far as some choke points and some different things. So I was just curious about it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We'll have some EDU calculations, you know, pretty early in this process. Once we get the concept of it, we can get hit pretty darn close. So,
If there are no more questions, I think it's a consensus of this board to give direction to staff to move forward with the conversation. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, Mr. Mendez. Apologize. Okay. We have some public hearings. I think that we should get those out of the way. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and open the meeting up for public hearings. Item number 7, public hearing, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Coronavirus 19 Response Tranche. Tranche 2 and 3, and use of CDBG program income to fund a housing element update and purchase of Type 6 fire engine.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Reynolds and council members. Tonight's public hearing is to discuss the CDBG Coronavirus 19 Response Tranche 2 and 3 program funding, and also to solicit comments and input from the council and citizens. Additionally, I'm looking for comments and input regarding a CDBG program only application, actually 2, where we would like to apply for funding of current program income balance and future receipts to update our housing element of the general plan, as well as to purchase a Type 6 fire engine. A budget adjustment will be needed for the unanticipated program income funds when that time comes, if we are awarded funds. The Community Development Department Housing and released their NOFA on December 18th, 2020, and then amended it on March 10th, 2021. And applications are due no later than May 7th. Eligible cities can submit applications for funding that directly meet the COVID-19 nexus. Both tranches equal a combined total of $418,000. It's a direct allocation to the city, so it's not competitive, but the projects have to be very tightly written for COVID-19 nexus. Eligible activities under the NOFA can provide funding again for narrowly scoped, tailored to demonstrate the nexus. On March 29th, 2021, staff held a public meeting where community members were presented with a brief overview of eligible activities, the timeline for the application and expenditures, and given an opportunity to comment. Thereafter, staff met to prioritize activities that best meet COVID-19 nexus and display a greater readiness, and also to provide a greater response for the community. For the coronavirus application, staff is recommending that we create a utility payment program partnering with Community Action Agency, where we would provide up to $100,000 of grant funds for citizens who are either in arrears of their utility bills. It could be power, water, broadband, of no more than 3 months. So either arrears or current struggle, they have to show that their struggle is directly related to either losing a job or losing funding through the coronavirus. And then also, the Oroville City Elementary School District had reached out to the city and is wanting to open up their Wyandotte Academy, basically their grounds for the community. They want to remove fencing so that the community can access the field, track and field, tennis courts. They are going to install lighting for security. They are going to install sidewalks, and then they're going to push the fencing back up around the schools. So there is security with the schools, but it'll be open, and they can utilize the track and field for running and tennis and whatever else is there in a social distance atmosphere where they aren't inside a building. The program income only applications that we're recommending, again, is for housing element update. We estimate that will be about $100,000, and so that's what we're asking with also general admin. And then the purchase of a Type 6 fire engine, I guesstimated over. It will not cost us $400,000 to purchase a Type 6, but at the time I wasn't at all aware when I had to get the staff report in. We are thinking it'll be about $250,000 to $260,000. The remaining program income will stay in our funds, and we'll utilize that for other projects or first-time home buyer loans. There are no general fund impact, And if awarded, I will request from the state that we can incur costs prior to the actual standard agreement, because they're taking longer than we want to get the money out for the coronavirus funding. And then we would be reimbursed by the state. As of today, we have $289,000. The staff report was $285,000, but it's a moving target daily. We're getting so many payoffs a month that it keeps increasing. So that is how allowing us to do these extra projects. And if you have any questions?
Do we have any questions from the public?
Mr. Mayor, I have not received any public speaker cards for this item, and there is no one on Zoom.
Okay, then we're going to close public communication on this item, and Councilmember Pittman wishes to speak.
Thank you. Yeah. As you're telling me we're going to have some more program income funds for first-time homebuyer homes, how's our inventory of that particular category?
Not good. So this is one of the reasons why I would like to move some of the program income to these projects. Oh, additionally, I did not bring up the fact that I am requesting to use $91,863 of program income on the Oroville City Elementary School project too. So housing is very scarce for even purchasing within our guidelines, maximum amounts. There are new houses being built, but they're right on the edge of they can go through our program, but the person, in order to qualify, isn't able to qualify for that high of a house. So we're struggling a little bit, and I have 3 other grant awards of housing funds. Therefore, I don't feel like we need the program income in that area. It was originally attached to our 2020 application for any future receipts of program income, and I've asked to take that off to use for other projects as they come in.
So my other question is, if in the city, and these are we can only loan money on homes inside the city limits. If we were to add some more city limits that had pre-existing homes, then our inventory would possibly be increased, and those properties would be eligible for first-time home buyer
Absolutely.
applicants. And that's a message I think I'd like to say to the public. There's another reason to annex properties, not just because we want you in the city, but it also helps the population that's trying to get first-time home buyer homes get them. And that's the problem we have. We're running out of properties that we can have for this program, and it's a wonderful program, and you can see it's working very well. So my compliments to your staff.
Thank you.
I know you're short-staffed to be able to get this much work done. It's a big deal. And those that are on the edge of being annexed, pay attention to this. This
Right,
could make
like
your property values rise.
We have 2 grant awards using home funds. We have $2 million in 2 separate grant awards that we have not spent yet. And we also have $1 million of CDBG funds that we were just awarded on the 2020 that we will be able to access shortly. We don't have a standard agreement yet. So there's $3 million that we have available, and that doesn't include program income in the home program as well as the CDBG program that's coming in every day.
And my other comment is just to give the public and those in the room a size of scope and scale. How many homes or properties in the city of Oroville does your department handle in first-time home buyer loans?
We have over 300. Our loan portfolio balance is over 30 million.
300 homes in the city are under the advantage of the first-time home buyer program. 300. And it needs to bulge out, and this is another good reason for folks to want to be in the city, because it helps your property values immensely. So thank you very much, Amy. I appreciate that.
Councilman Pittman, if I could just add in there, so if anybody's wondering how come we don't just access those grant funds, we have to use our program income prior to accessing those grant funds. Amy and I work closely on this every day, and Amy wants to access those, but I've tried to reiterate time and time again, we have to use that program income first.
Yeah.
And that's an excellent point about annexation and making this available. This is a very good program and opportunity for people who are just on the edge of, being able to afford a home, but not necessarily the down payment and everything necessary. This is a very useful tool for that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I appreciate the report. Just maybe a follow-up. I know some time ago we were talking about, for example, the old 203K program, rehabilitation, because when you look at inventory in Oroville, we actually have a lot of inventory. It's just not very desirable. They're really, some of the homes are in pretty rough shape. I know that old 203K program was just that. It was a rehabilitation program where, and again, elevating the overall area and bringing properties back, where they, once again are presentable. I don't know if has there been any more discussion with that kind of concept or opportunities?
No, it's always in the back of my mind, but to develop that program, it's going to take a lot of staff time and a lot of work. Yeah. Additionally, getting it approved through the state, because all it makes it tricky when you have to do the environmental NEPA for it, and you also have the construction. So the timing I'm not familiar with. I need to work with somebody who's running, even if there are any jurisdictions that are currently running them with their low-income housing program. We were awarded $750,000 through our CDBG grant, the 2020 for housing rehab, but it would be in the city limits of Oroville, and it's owner-occupied. So I know that doesn't help for the investment properties, but CDBG is not really too supportive of investment properties. It's more owner-occupied. So
maybe you could just vet that out. There might be somebody sitting out there not even really understanding what you said. So I own a home. I'm economically challenged, but I own my own home. Mm-hmm. There are dollars available in the city right now where you can come alongside and help rehabilitate some of those properties.
There are funds available. We do not have a contractor on board yet because the program has been on hold for a few years. So I need to get an RFP out for a contractor on board that would be able to do the work write-ups for the projects, go out there, do the progress payments. We used to have staff that did that, and we don't. So we're going to be hiring that out. But yes, as soon as we can get that done, then we'll be advertising our rehab program.
So there's hope for the future. So, again, just looking at some of the properties that, in our town, you look at, you go, gosh, it needs a little love, and that would just go a long way. I think overall for all of our property values as well, because,
yes.
It affects all of us when our properties, fall into disrepair. So I'm hopeful. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you.
Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you. One of the things you mentioned is that you guys have an issue with staffing, that your department is understaffed. Is there a possibility to use program income to support staffing, or is that not appropriate?
For sure. We are able to do general admin and what's called activity delivery. General admin is overall overhead cost. Activity delivery is project related to an address. Mm-hmm. And we use it all the time for staff that I have. We have a 2-month new assistant who's working out really well. I would like to bring somebody on at some point that is maybe an analyst too, that could help with some of the project developments and RFPs and things like that. The thing with grant funding, again, is we have always historically been super successful with grant funding, but it is grant funding and it's a 36 grant, cycle. So I get a little nervous about bringing people on, even though we probably really could, but that's something we definitely need to look at in this next probably budget.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, I don't think anyone can argue with the fact of what an amazing job you do.
Oh, thank you.
Really appreciate it every day. I think that's all the questions that we had for you. I'm looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 8931.
I so move.
Second. Did you want both resolutions?
Do them separate.
Okay.
They're listed separate.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 8932.
So move.
Second.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Okay, moving on to item number 8, Oroville Veterans Village Project at 711 Montgomery Street, including general plan amendment, GPA 20-03 zoning amendment, ZC 20-04, establishment of a PD-O and tentative subdivision map TSM 20-02. Wes?
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, this project is a partnership between the city and the Veterans Development Housing Corporation, VHDC, which is planning to build a 12-unit townhome project, which would consist of 4 3-unit buildings, 0 lot line buildings. Features of the project include the homes are all 2-story and mostly 2 bedrooms, but there are 2 3-bedroom units. The applicant has confirmed that these are 55-year deed restricted units available for sale to veterans only who must stay for 5 years, and then they can only sell to another veteran. So that's for 55 years. The project will be phased in groups of 3, very likely, starting with lots 10 through 12 on the 6th Street side. And Jackie, do we have a visual? The city will donate the vacant land to VHDC at the appropriate time, which was formerly the site of a cluster of substandard rental cottages that the city demolished. Because the proposed project would not meet our R3 zoning development standards, specifically setbacks, they're 0 lot lines, and lot widths, these are proposed to be 20-foot, 19, 20-foot wide lots. Applicant has adopted to apply for a planned development overlay, often PUD in other communities, which allows the project to deviate from our existing zoning code. By a vote of 5 to 1 to 1, the Planning Commission forwarded a recommendation to this council for approval of the project, and they applauded the project's concept and value to the community. Given the project's location at the gateway to downtown, the commissioners spent a lot of time discussing whether the facade adequately reflects downtown Oroville's turn-of-the-century historic theme, which is in our code, and ultimately determined that it does. You may hear testimony on this point. You can see in the staff report that the project's required approvals are a planned development overlay, a tentative subdivision map approval, which the city engineer has reviewed, a general plan amendment to make the general plan designation medium high density residential, and a zoning code amendment for the underlying zoning to be R3. All of these must be approved by the city council. The applicant has, I believe, a couple of attendees by Zoom, supposedly Kent Trimble, and Don Russell, the principal engineer, is here tonight and can testify or answer questions. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Do we have any questions on this item from the public?
Mr. Mayor, I do have a few public speakers on this item. The first speaker is Natalie Sheard. And in addition, while she is walking up, I did also receive a few emails that I forwarded to you as well.
Thank you. I think Wes answered my main concern. We were told and we're being promised that this is going to be homes for veterans to live in, veterans who need support for the length of as long as the building exists. And I just want to be assured in a measurable way, promised almost, that we're not going to look at that building 10 years from now and having changed our general plan and our zoning and look at a supportive housing situation that doesn't have a veteran in it. So that's my main concern, and that's what I'm asking you to just promise us. Since the city owns the land and this is on our wonderful gateway to downtown, which of course I'm extremely biased and love our downtown. So I think he might have answered my question, but I'm not completely sure. So that's all I'm asking you to do.
What was your question, Ms. Sheard?
That we will have a measurable way. We will know that veterans will own those homes and live in them.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, Scott Heber, City Attorney, there will be a deed restriction recorded on all of these properties, a 55-year deed restriction such that if there is anybody who does not comply with it, the deed restriction essentially is a cloud on title. They would not be able to transfer that property to someone else who is not a veteran.
Okay.
So that's without posting somebody outside and 24/7 making sure that it is always that way. A deed restriction
Right.
is as close as possible as you can get to that.
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much for caring so much about that gateway entrance and the landscaping that you do and all of it. I appreciate all of it and the care into the 12 acres. So thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Mike Brown.
Thank you again, Mayor Reynolds, members of the council. I can assure you there's no shortage of veterans that need housing. My nephew recently lost his home in Berry Creek, and he's had to move out of state. My brother is a veteran. He could have used this at one time. So could other of my family members. So thank you. I appreciate you supporting the project, and I commend the council on working on this for some time now. It can reduce homelessness. And while I encourage you to approve the rezoning from C2 to R3, it's an intensity of housing that the fire department you currently have is going to be challenged by. Dave, you know what it's like to rescue people. Right now we have a single-story fire department, not for anything they do that's amiss. There's just not enough of them. And in the future, if you don't build up the fire department in whatever fashion you collectively choose, this will be a one-story town, because under the bright light of the public safety element of an EIR, you can't justify a second, third-story occupancy, and you certainly couldn't protect a regional hospital. It's a heck of a lot of work to fight fire above the ground. And when fire departments are understaffed, it takes a toll on the firefighters. And statistically, it increases on-the-job injuries and death when fire departments are understaffed. And lastly, I'll close by saying that while you have excellent fire protection, it's not just a matter of the few you have. All over the U.S., we're dealing with challenges like this in the fire service. How do we protect? Well, we try to engineer solutions. But even the engineered solutions, like sprinkler systems that are passive, smoke.
I'm sorry, Mr. Brown, your time is up. Thank you, sir.
Thank
you. Mr. Mayor, our last speaker on this item is Don Russell.
Don Russell, Russell Galloway Associates. We're the architects for the project. What we're proposing is 10 two-bedroom, 1,250 square foot, two-story fee-owned properties, and 2 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot. All the parking is loaded off Fur Alley. We have private garage parking. The 3-bedroom have a 2-car garage. The 2-bedroom have a single car garage. There's going to be a homeowners association to take care of common maintenance. We have common drainage issues, that we got to deal with all of our on-site rainwater. And we worked hard with the Planning Commission on the aesthetics. They were really adamant that we make this look to match the turn of the century that you see down farther on Montgomery Street. And so we worked hard with them and appreciate their input. And I think, it ended up they were happy with that. So I hope you will approve this and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from this dais? Councilmember Riggs.
I have a few questions. The first was, are there any other specifications other than veterans as far as income or disability for this project? Who might want to answer that?
Hello, my name is Brad Long. I'm the Executive Director for the Veterans Housing Development Corporation. So the qualifications for this is that they be below 80% average median income, which for a family of 3 in Butte County is 55,000, which is actually higher than the median household income there of 44,000. So besides being a veteran, a veteran, they are also required to have below 80% average median income.
Thank you. My next question or observation is on the landscape plans. It indicates a 6-foot-high tubular steel fencing. However, on the renderings in these images, it is clearly not a 6-foot-high tubular fencing, and so I would, while driving down Montgomery, no residents have 6-foot-high tubular fencing. Majority is 3 feet or 4 feet, and so just a personal preference that get modified from 6 foot to 4.
I believe that the reason for the 6 foot out front, and I believe why it is appropriate, is because that is the common area where any children that live there would be playing. So it's, I realize that it does not appear that way, but I mean, the angle you're looking at, it could be 6 foot. You know, I'm not really sure, but I believe that it is appropriate to have that size of fencing there because this is a common area. The housing will be set back to the back of the lot, up against Fur, where the cars will come in, Fur Alley, where the cars will come in to access the garages, and there's nowhere for children to play other than in this common area in front of the home. So I believe that was the reasoning why the tall fencing was put in place, and I think a nice wrought iron done appropriately is going to be aesthetically pleasing. It won't be so fortressly looking as one might imagine.
I think a 3 or 4 would also suffice for that purpose.
Our city codes specify 42-inch high fences in the front yards unless the fence is set back 5 feet from the back of the sidewalk, in which case it can be 6 feet high. So that is our city standard. We'll work with applicant to make sure that this is a good design for everyone.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, quick question too on the homeowners association. I'm getting the picture that they'll all be paying into to have the O&M done on this. Is that accurate? Okay. Then the other question about veterans. So this could be a veteran spouse and possibly family, or is just solely retired veterans?
Families as well.
So we're not limiting to the veterans. They're wide open. So as Mr. Brown mentioned, you know, there's people that would be ably applicable for these particular housing units.
Brad, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, the primary head of household, the one that will qualify for the CalVet home loan on these properties, that head of household has to be a veteran. So they could have 2 or 3 other dependents. And that's why we have 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units in there. So with whatever their household makeup is, the head of that household has to be a veteran.
The other quick question I had, and I didn't see the drawings, but for handicapped ones, most of the primary living is on the 2nd floor. Will they have staircase assistance or elevators, or what's your plan there for those that are invalids?
Brad, we did not ask for accessibility for these units. Residential housing typically is not required to have accessibility, and that can be added later, I think.
Yeah, I agree there. We probably need to make a qualification. This is not a permanent supportive housing complex. These are owner-occupied units. We do not foresee that we will probably have invalid veterans that will be looking at purchasing these. Those veterans, we do have very specific facilities. CalVet Retirement Home up here in Redding. We also have permanent supportive housing in other areas throughout Northern California for those types of veterans. But these are your veterans that are out there working a job, participating in everyday life just like a regular citizen of your area would be. So this is just a standard, basically just a family townhouse that a veteran who is qualified income-wise can purchase.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I also can weigh in on this. It's Leo DePaula. With regard to the spectrum of housing you offer, we have many multifamily housing projects. These are actually single-family dwellings that are set up in a townhouse fashion to support veterans who are in this situation of living. There is no requirement for accessibility on single-family dwellings. So that's why there would be no requirement on these homes from that standpoint.
And that's fine too. There are staircase assist devices, so I just wanted to put the picture to the public, and I thank you for your description about what type of veterans we're looking at. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. And it just offers more diversity on the availability of homes. Yeah.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I was just going to echo Councilwoman Riggs' comment about the fencing. I think that 60 or you said 42-inch. I think you can still meet those safety requirements for young play and have a little lower, because I think it's relationship to the gateway and the entry. I think it would be aesthetically more appealing if that fence wasn't, if we can accommodate the safety factors. I'm definitely in agreement with that.
Councilmember Goodson.
Yes, I'm not sure who spoke to this, but could someone give me go over the specificity of the income structure and the percentages very quickly?
Sure.
I
This is
heard
Brad again with Veterans
55,000
Housing.
and 80%.
Yeah, it's 80% average median income. So you have to be below 80% average median income. For Butte County, that is $55,000 a year. And those are people that, could qualify for very possible just using the federal VA home loan to go buy any house they want. We do have better terms with the CalVet loans that we'll be using on these. So that makes these very hospitable to look at for the veterans. And right now, just to put it in perspective, your average household median income right now in in Oroville is $44,000. So they're actually above the average median income. Now, we could see them drop down, and that's for a family of three. You'll excuse me on that. That's for a family of three, which is just a rough average. We usually see families of two or three in these situations, sometimes four. But that could range all the way down to potentially 50% AMI, which for your area is $31,000 a year, which potentially could qualify. But most of the people that we've pre-screened for this program are right around 80% average median income.
And I have one more question, thank you. In regards to the recruitment process, I know that there's an eligibility criteria, but what I see here is a waiting list. Because the population size of the veterans is
that potentially could happen, especially considering the catastrophic fires that we've been through. And, we take everything that we possibly can into consideration for those veterans who are potentially looking at these homes. So, we wish we could build homes for every veteran in need in Northern California, but it's an unwieldy, slow process. We were hoping that we would be much further along in this process, but COVID has delayed us about 8 months to a year. But we're thankful to be at this point and before the city council right now.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hatley.
Yes, thank you. The question I have, now, the only involvement the city is going to have in this project is just donating the land and that. And what I'm getting at is this. This is for, what I've heard is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is for the veterans that has to be in there with, and can be there with his family. Now, what happens, I don't want the city to get involved in being anywhere on strong-arming a family out of a place if the veteran leaves either by choice or by nature. So if they leave that property, what happens to the family, since you're telling me that this is strictly for a veteran? The way I understood it was a veteran had to be in the
Correct, Councilman Hatley. What would happen in that type of event is it's not the city's responsibility. This would fall to VHDC, and they would be the ones that would be responsible for ensuring that it's veteran-owned and veteran-occupied.
I just want to make sure that the city doesn't, nobody can come back and go, well, you said this was going to happen, city, like the lady that was up here earlier said, well, I just want to make sure that we don't get into that situation where we're having to be the bad guy in this, if for a lack of a better term.
VHDC and Calvet would be responsible for that at that point.
All right, thank you. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Councilmember Riggs.
I wanted to also say that I did reach out to community members who live in Eureka, where this organization also has properties, and they said that your properties were very well maintained and a real benefit to their community. So I wanted to applaud you guys on that. And then
thank you.
Yep. The second comment I have is not necessarily related to this project, but it does relate in a sense that with the development with Mark Mendez's proposal and with this, there's I would say that there would be an increased need for regional bus service through that area. Currently, our regional bus does not go down Montgomery Street that far, so just something to consider for future development.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Having none, looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 8934.
I move that we adopt resolution 8934.
A second.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Looking to waive the first reading and introduce by title only ordinance number 1852.
Second.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Thank you, Wes. Okay, back to regular business. Item number 10, SR 162 ATP project status update and request for additional funding.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. As you stated this evening, we have a project status update as well as a description of the elements that are needed to complete the active transportation grant program elements that are along State Route 162. These improvements run from Highway 70 up to Foothill Boulevard. Some of these improvements will be filling in the gaps of the sidewalks, curb gutter and sidewalk. The bike lanes would be added, as well as some lighting. On Zoom this evening, we have the project manager, Mike Mazzaro. He will be providing some more of the backstory and history on this project, and then we'll follow up with what our staff requests are. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mike Mazzaro.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thanks for your time tonight. Jackie, are you able to share the screen?
It's showing up right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, it's been a while since we brought this project forward to the council. I think pretty much since we brought on our design contract in the end of 2019. So this is State Route 162. Pedestrian Bicycle Disabled Mobility and Safety Improvements Project. It's an ATP-funded project that the city was awarded on Cycle 3 back in 2016. Dawn did a pretty good overview of the project already. Basically, it's going to improve pedestrian safety, ADA ramps, and primarily put in sidewalk gap closures, some high visibility crosswalks, obviously the buffered bike lanes, and some flashing beacon enhancements. A key element of it as well is some multi-use trail connection from Oro Dam Boulevard down into Feather River Parkway. It's a key element as well. And the ATP project was meant to build on an earlier grant that the city received back in 2013, which was the Bicycle Transportation Account grant. And that was to install Class 2 bike lane from Feather River all the way out to Orange along Oro Dam Boulevard. So along the state route corridor and then beyond out to basically Acacia. It's important to note at this point that neither of those grant applications assumed any right-of-way acquisition, and we'll get to that point later. But that's sort of a key element on where we are with the project at this point. Here's a map of the project and some of the key elements outlined. You can see some of the sidewalk closures that would go in, the gap closures along in green, pretty significant elements of gap closure where folks currently walk or bike adjacent to the roadway without a curb and gutter. And there's significant elements of that as well out on Olive Highway to all the way out to Foothill Boulevard. So some of the history on the project, the city received both CMAQ and ATP grant funds. They were committed back in 2016. The city signed a project management contract with Bennett Engineering in September of 2018, and we brought a co-op agreement forward for council to sign on November 2018, where the city agreed to deliver the project with the grant funds provided. We put out an RFP and went through the process laid out by the Department of Local Assistance with Caltrans to hire Mark Thomas back in 2019, December, and they started work in January of 2020. Not long after that, in May 2020, the BTA grant program ended, and so we invoiced as much of the work as we could to that old grant before it sunsetted. But we were not able to build the BTA grant bike lanes in time. So that scope of work was included into the ATP project. The design team moved forward, developing the design and identifying some gaps. And they provided a 30% design cost estimate and a notification of our budget and right-of-way gaps in October of 2020. At that point, we recognized the need to reassess the project and try to understand how we could perhaps bring some savings to the town due to the budget shortfall. And we've been working on that pretty much ever since as a project team, the city engineer, BCAG, and the Caltrans project management team. So the original project and grant funding that we have comes from both the capacity management and air quality, as well as the active transportation project fund. And this is the way it's broken out, or how that money is supposed to be allocated. So basically, in order to implement this project, which is a very large project and fairly transformative for the town and for the Caltrans right away, nearly $4 million in grant funding at stake here. So it's a really important and impactful project, and there's a lot of money at stake to be utilized. What we found is we analyzed the project and looked at the right-of-way gaps that we had, and to define these right-of-way gaps a little bit clearer for mayor and council is basically from Oro Dam, from around 7th Street to just past 5th Street, there's just not quite wide enough a right-of-way to install the new gap closures and sidewalk. And so what's needed is a fairly thin strip of right-of-way along that corridor there. And, that addition of right-of-way and the installation of the sidewalk has some impacts. It will take away some of the parking stalls there for some of those businesses and force a reorientation of their parking. And there's a few of the signs there that have been there for quite some time that will need to be moved or set back to get it back from the right of way. So there's some elements there of cost that are added to the project. But basically, for the P&AD phase of the project, we're looking at a cost estimate right now of about $80,000. The plan specs and estimate project around $570. And then this is one of the larger elements here is the right of way. We're estimating around $400,000 to acquire that right of way. There's some contingency built into that. Another $260,000 thereabouts to support that right of way, which is the engineering, valuation, and acquisition process that we would need to get started on. And that we do not have funded. Because it wasn't defined in the original description of the grant, it cannot be funded under the ATP or CMAQ grants, and additional money cannot be brought from the state to pay for those elements. We also have a capital construction cost estimate at this point of just under $4.7 million. As you can see from the grant budget from when this application was put together way back in 2015, they were anticipating just over $3 million. And so there's a large deficit there. Construction support, construction management, around $300,000. Overall, we're looking at a project full implementation cost of this project at about $6.3 million. And so we're short about just under $2.4 million to pay for the project. And so that's what we've been working on, is how to close that gap. Interestingly, Caltrans has a SHOP project, or capital preventative maintenance project, in the scoping phase right now for Highway 162, from Highway 70 all the way out to Foothill Boulevard. Now, this project, I haven't seen a definitive cost on this, but they're estimating about $11 million in construction costs to do this job. That project is primarily about, redoing the paving, that entire section of road of the state highway. But that project would also need to improve lighting and intersections, crosswalks, drainage associated with installing new sidewalks, gap closures. All of those things would need to be included if not for the ATP project. So there's some overlap here between these projects. Also, if all this work that is currently sort of defined was completed and designed and built with our ATP project next year, then in 2025, Caltrans would come in and repave that section, which would mean all of the striping and all that would have to get redone. And we always hate to see new infrastructure go in and then get torn out by a subsequent project. We've been talking with Caltrans about potentially moving that project up and trying to get some more of an overlap here. But with the current cycle and commitment of ATP funds, we cannot delay any longer to try to deliver on our project, nor can they move theirs up. So there is going to be this sort of 3-year gap in construction between these two projects. And but we've been working to coordinate these projects to remove the overlap in scope. So our current project status is that we've extended an extension of the funding milestones under ATP. Originally, when we got the grant, it was planned to have design done near the end of last year and be in construction for this construction season, 2021. We've moved back to 2022. We've been working with Yvonne Garcia at BCAG, has been a great advocate for this project. And he's had some preliminary conversations with Transportation Commission and Caltrans District 3 staff to try and help us split up this scope and remove the overlap. So we would move some of this funding and split it. We need to get that scope change approved at the Transportation Commission meeting in June. And that's why we need some direction now in order to be able to move forward and try to finish up those agreements. Per initial discussions, we're left with these additional costs for right-of-way and construction to complete the project under our cooperative agreement. And right now, we estimate our shortfall, if we can get the funding split approved on construction, the remaining burden to the city is looking at around $984,000. We've had discussions with Yvonne and at BCAG, and he's offered to advocate for the city with BCAG to try to bring additional funding from BCAG to defray some of these additional costs to the city. That would still need to go to the BCAG board for approval. But we have yet to work through that exactly, but they have staff has made a commitment to advocate and try to bring additional dollars to support this funding shortfall. So with that, I'll leave the rest on the next steps to Dawn to review for you.
So here, as Mr. Mazzaro has presented, that our shortfall currently looks at about $984,000. I also have Yvonne Garcia with BCAG here to offer up what they're willing to support the city with.
Good evening. My name is Yvonne Garcia. I'm the programming manager with the Butte County Association of Governments. The city's in a predicament here. The city prepared a grant 5+ years ago, lowballed it, underscoped it, and it's a great grant. You got a commitment of $4 million. BCAG funded the original 500 or so thousand in congestion mitigation and air quality program. It has merits. We think we have a solution. Caltrans is going to overlay the highway through there. They've tentatively agreed to do all the elements associated with the bike lane part of it. If the city is willing to step up and do all the pedestrian stuff and some other lighting and striping and some pretty much a 50-50 split. The first step is if the city authorizes council staff to move forward and is willing and able to come up $500,000-600,000 or so. Then in my capacity, I would advocate to my board to try to come up with the difference, whatever that is. Maybe even split whatever the city's portion is. I think it's a good use of funds. If I'm not worried about it, I don't think the council needs to worry about it. I think we can come up with it. That's the first part. The second part is if this moves forward, then I would schedule a meeting with the California Transportation Commission staff and the head of the Active Transportation Program coordinator with Caltrans. They need to buy into this scope change. If they do, then it goes to the commission, and the commission's appointed by the governor. They need to approve it. So different elements need to happen. But this is where the city's at with this project. But it's a good project. It checks all the boxes, and it's a big project. And I think it is really transformative for the community. I'm happy to address any questions.
Councilmember Smith has a question.
Yeah, I think the project's absolutely necessary, and as you mentioned, transformative, I think is almost an understatement. You know, that aesthetically, just as we think about tourism, as we think about everything coming back, with people coming to our community, and all those gaps aesthetically, I mean, it's been needed like forever. So, I mean, I certainly am on board with getting this done. It's a little disappointing to hear that somebody missed something to me that would almost be elementary when it comes to easement issues, because it's almost like you just take and lay that new piece over the top, and it's like, well, yeah, we got issues here and there and here, and So, not to beat up on someone, but I'm a little curious how'd that happen. That's like a big oops. But I just want you to know that I think that we need to do this sooner than later. I think the project needs to happen ASAP. I think with just all the growth and what's happening in our community, to delay this would be potentially more frustrating for people as we just move through the town. As we think about the hospital coming online, all of these pieces that are just being developed. I think it would be a huge mistake to delay this, any more than it needs to. That's my opinion. But I am just, for what it's worth, a little disappointed. I don't know if we need to beat up on someone or not, but it probably doesn't really matter at this point. It just needs to happen.
Councilmember Goodson.
And I had a question for Mike. Thank you. It was a good, appreciate that. And I agree. This should have happened a decade ago. Mike?
Mm-hmm.
Here's my question. You had mentioned signs, and I thought about it. And so here's my question. How many signs are going up that corridor? And how many are city-owned and how many are owned by Stott and Outdoor? And what type of costs would we incur? And what are we responsible for? Because those signs will have to be set back.
Right. So as part of the easement, once we get the engineering done on the easements, the additional right of way that is needed to be acquired, we enter in negotiations with each of the property owners, and that includes a discussion of what the impacts are. So if they're losing some parking stalls and they need to be redone in a different position, and if a sign needs to be set back, those all figure into the cost of purchasing that right of way. And so there's a couple ways it can be handled. The sign could be moved with the construction of the project. Most often what's done is the negotiation, right of way negotiation, meets with the landowner or the business owner and comes to an agreement about what that cost is, and that's included in the agreement. And then the business owner contracts to have the sign moved or set back. Right now, we think there's about 3 that need to move. As we work through the design, we'll pin that down and get that done. But so because we don't have right of way approved in our design or acquisition in our scope of work yet, because it wasn't in the grant funds, we need to get approval from the city to take on that element in order to push this project forward. Understanding that the city pays this portion of acquiring the right of way, and it goes back to the state highway to manage. And then there's usually a maintenance agreement between the city and Caltrans to, like there is now, to maintain the sidewalk and do weed abatement and that kind of thing.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you. Question for Don. I'm in support of doing the project. Where's the money going to come from for our part?
So currently, it would come from our transportation fund. And we have a budget balance, bear with me. Well, what we're requesting actually is to put this in the 21-22 fiscal year budget under that transportation fund. And so I apologize, I don't have the fund balance here in the staff report. I will get that fund balance for you, however.
I know Councilmember Hatley's going to want that.
My next question is for the BK gentleman, if he'd step up for a second. And I appreciate that, knowing about coordinating with Caltrans and repair work. Is there any other repair work planned for the state highway due to the trucks pounding the pavement lately, and even more so now, from your perspective, and maybe even outside the city? There's a lot of trucks hauling a lot of material. Is there any more work to be done to fix those roadways because of that, or are you aware of any?
I can't speak for Caltrans, but just as a region, the Butte County makes out very well under the State Highway Operations and Protection Program from Caltrans. By far, that's the biggest transportation fund source.
Okay. My reason for that is the logging trucks are at 300 trucks a day coming through the community. And even actually not up to 4 now, I think it's 400. And that's got to have an impact on the roadways. And I hope that we see those roads appropriately addressed down the line.
I would encourage you to direct staff to send me an email with those specific concerns, and I will follow up.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Councilman
that.
Pittman, if we could, we are actively working with FEMA on that for any damage to the roadways and cataloging that and making sure that the community does receive what reimbursement we can for the damage to our roads.
It'd be nice to share that with BCAG too, because we're all getting our roads worn out. And I appreciate the work being done. I mean, I think bringing the trees in and clearing the debris is all good work. It just also has a combination effect in the unintended consequences of wearing out the roads.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
And regarding the funds for the city's portion, I suspect there would likely be the Transportation Development Act that come to the city, and specifically your local transportation funds that come through BCAG and then back to the city at your discretion. There's
So-
typically a fund balance.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm not encouraged by writing a blank check for something, so thank you. No, we got some
Councilmember
funds.
Goodson.
Yes, I was hoping that Ruth or Bill would know just an approximate figure. I have a figure stuck in my head, what's in that transportation fund, but it's not accurate.
So it's actually several funds. We have the RSTP fund that we get an allocation for annually. We have our BCAG transportation fund. Excuse me. And the last 2 years, we've been lucky enough to budget $500,000 out of our new district tax fund. So all in all, last year we had a budget of $3.5 million for street repairs and road projects, and I'm sure we didn't get close to spending that. So I'm very confident that there's going to be plenty of money available for this project.
So we have not exhausted
No.
those funds
No.
for the projects that we've already identified.
Right.
But we still have.
And next year we'll be able to
Project.
budget more. So it's something I do annually, that I figure out how much we spent and then how much we have for the next year. And this year was 3.5, and I don't think we're getting close to that. But next year will only be more available if we keep doing the 500,000 out of the district tax fund and all of the allocations
Stable.
that we're getting. So there's quite a bit of money available for these projects. We've been very slow to spend it in years past, so we're very fortunate to have the staff now to get these things done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, and I'm probably not saying anything that you haven't already thought of, but when you use the trigger date 2025 and thinking Caltrans and that project, and then with all the work going on up in Berry Creek, hundreds and hundreds of homes right now, as we speak, are actually being removed, and that's actively going on now, and all the trees. So again, coming back to those impacts, is there any way to appeal that project would need to be potentially moved up because of all the additional traffic, because of, again, removing maybe over 1,000 homes at this point being removed out of Berry Creek? I know because mine's one of them. So.
In speaking with Caltrans, just to advance and accelerate the delivery of their project to meet the targets of your ATP project, they can't. They're going as fast as they can, and that just speaks volumes on how long it actually takes to deliver a transportation project. It's the process.
And just for clarity, if I could, Councilman Smith does live in the city of Oroville. He had an investment property in Berry Creek. He does now.
I saw that coming. Good save.
And to also add to Councilmember Goodson's comments as to the budget, so in the 2021 fiscal year budget, we had allocated for $3 million for our paving program, but the proposal, the lowest bidder came in at $2 million. So we have carry forward of the $1 million to add to the 21-22 fiscal year.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I guess the good old days are over of the 1950s when Dyke and Kenny Richter just jumped on their bulldozers and punched Oro Dam through because there was no Oro Dam until they did that. And, this is the end of it. We've been able to use that for 70 years. And now we're just coming to the point where we're growing and things need to be, and I'd like to commend them too for being icons here and just absolutely having a vision and doing it.
Absolutely.
Things have gotten a little more complicated since then.
Just a little bit.
So, do we have any public comment on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have not received any public speaker cards on this item.
Okay, and I think we're done commenting from the dais. I'm kind of curious. We got a recommendation here of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things here. Mr. Attorney, do you want me to read all this out?
No, sir. It can be done with one motion.
Okay. Looking for a motion then to adopt the SR 162 ATP project status update and request for additional funding.
I move that we adopt the SR 162 ATP project status update and request for additional funding.
A second?
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 11, Oroville Convention Center change order for stucco shell repairs.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm sorry to be returning to you again for stucco shell repairs to the Oroville Convention Center. However, following the last approval of a change order on February 2nd, the company commenced their work to replace the gutters, downspouts, parapet caps, and as they were removing those items, the stucco began failing and pulling away from the supported structure underneath. So their recommendation, as opposed to patching these areas, because their failure could continue, was to remove the stucco altogether on the west wall and the north wall facing the river, and to fully replace it. So the proposal for the west wall of the building is going to be the $164,000. Oops, I'm sorry, wrong proposal. Is going to be the $125,000, and for the rear wall or the north wall is going to be $146,995. With that, what we're requesting is an amount not to exceed $275,000 in case there are any other items that may come up that need to be included in that. We are hoping again at this time that this will be the last exterior repair. I have contacted the contractor again today, asking him to reassure me that the east wall will hold for another 5 to 10 years at least, and he's pretty confident that it will because that is the wall in the best condition. It can probably sustain some more caulking and elastomeric paint to hold it for another 5 to 10 years, and we can budget it at that time. But at this time, it just really looks as though the west and north walls are in dire need of being replaced to secure the exterior of that building so that we no longer have any interior water intrusion or leaks or issues of that sort.
You've seen the whole northwest face of the Oroville High School gymnasium fell off.
We don't want that.
We don't want that.
No.
No. So, anyway, I would imagine that this building's suffering the same age-related problems. Do we have any comments from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have not received any blue speaker cards on this item.
Do we have any comment? Oh, Councilmember Goodson.
To date, Dawn, how much have these renovations cost us and continue to cost us for the now Oroville Convention Center?
So if we are not counting the gym floor, the scrubber, the gymnasium floor scrubber, and the chairs that were purchased back in 2018, I believe, including the lighting and the stage sound system, the interior paint, the exterior paint that has not taken place but will following the stucco repairs, and the exterior roof and stucco repairs, we are looking at about $929,000 should this proposal be approved.
Did you mention bathrooms?
Bathrooms are not included yet as we do not have the proposal. Neither are the ADA upgrades to the front exterior to access the building. But again, this is an icon in our community. So.
Did you say exterior roof as opposed to the interior roof?
Oh, well, I rolled exterior roof and shell repairs into one. So.
Well, are you finished with your comments, Councilmember Goodson? Hey, look on the bright side, you got a $2 million building.
And should we demolish and rebuild the building, it would be multi-millions of dollars. So it's repair the asset we have or demolish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I reserve further comment.
I appreciate that. You know, I actually, and looking on the bright side, we could have this problem and no money.
True.
So yeah, it's a lot of money, but we're fixing something that needs to be fixed. I'm restoring a historical building right now, and sometimes you get a house of cards.
That is true.
So, with
including the fund balance.
You're very welcome.
everybody has their spot. I know Councilmember Hatley wants that.
I'm learning.
Okay, well, if there are no more comments, we are looking for a recommendation to approve the change orders with Butte Roofing Company in an amount not to exceed $275,000.
So moved.
Second.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Moving on to item number 12, Municipal Services Review Draft Update.
Thank you again, Dawn Nevers, Mayor and council members. What we have here is a very preliminary review of our municipal services review update. And so our municipal services review is to demonstrate the city's ability to provide services to both existing and future residents within or around the city of Oroville. We have worked diligently with our consultant to provide them the information they need to provide these draft chapters. We're still waiting on one final chapter, the finance chapter. Once that is received, then the final municipal services review will be presented to this body, but we wanted to give you an update as to where we are currently because we've been working on this project for so long. So again, this is an early update, but still an update. So you'll see it goes through the various chapters for accountability of governance, public safety, parks, planning, all of those. Also, once this is completed, this will go to LAFCO. LAFCO takes it from there. And it'll be a 21-day public review period to where comments will be received. And then LAFCO will make their determination from there.
Mr. Mayor, we have already identified where there's a few mistakes within the document itself that we will work with the consultant to get those corrected. One of those was one that was brought to my attention by Councilperson Riggs, and we are working to get those corrected as we come across those.
Okay. Are there any comments from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have one public speaker, Cloud Watcher.
I'm sorry, who?
Cloud Watcher.
Okay.
Hello. Hello. I just have a question. Could you explain the municipal services review a little bit for people that don't know the wording? I mean, I know that the city of Oroville is interested in expanding into other areas. And so is this municipal services review part of a sphere of influence, and how are they related to the effort to annex?
So I apologize. Did you have more questions?
No, that was my question. I just want to know, because that, I think you will get a lot of people interested in the details of the process.
So the municipal services review is required under the provisions of the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Local Government Reorganization Act. And so this is a document that needs to be produced should or prior to any sphere changes or annexations within the area of study. And so this is, yes, you're correct, a document that would need to be updated should we pursue annexations with Thermalito or change our sphere of influence within Butte County region. So this document allows LAFCO, which is the Local Agency Formation Commission, to review what our city's capabilities are so that they know that we have the ability to take on or provide these added services to these areas.
Are there any other comments from the public? It's a
Miss-
2-minute comment time.
Right. Mr. Mayor, the the person that just spoke is requesting to speak again, but no one else is requesting to speak at this time.
We have a 2-minute limit.
Mhm.
Did you run a clock?
I did not start it when she started speaking.
But just again, this is informational at this time. No decision is being made. We're just providing it to you as in draft form before the final draft is brought to this body. There's still more work that needs to be done by the consultant and more review by staff.
Okay. Are there any questions from this dais or comments? Councilmember Goodson.
This municipal services review was finalized prior to, okay, the bottom line is our law enforcement, our public safety is going through some changes. It's fluid. And so we will be looking at revisions prior to.
Correct.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So just wanted everyone to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay. The fragility of the situation that we're in.
That was a staff discussion today.
All right.
Councilmember Riggs.
I just want to say that I really enjoyed reading this report, and I think that it really provides a good, I might be the single person who enjoyed reading this. I realize that as I say it. But it does provide a very good snapshot of the jurisdiction of the city and the different departments of the city. So I would encourage community members and citizens to take some time to skim through the different areas that they find important. This really gives a good insight in the health and the state of our community.
And I would like to request holding off on skimming until the final draft is released.
Oh, but what if they're so eager that they want to read it now?
Sorry.
All right, fine. Well, I also have several other comments in relation to the draft, but I'll resolve that with staff at another time.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other comments? Looking for a motion to recommend approval of the draft municipal services review to the Butte Local Agency Formation Committee.
I move that we approve of the municipal services review draft.
I second.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Time for a break, maybe? Maybe take a break?
I think we're done.
Oh, we done?
We're done. Okay, moving on to reports, discussions, and correspondence. Are there any announcements from this council? Councilmember Goodson.
Yes, I don't have any committee updates, but I would be remiss if I did not speak out regarding, as Bobby O'Reilly had mentioned earlier, the tragic loss of one of our community youth, Tatiana Duggar. I know that there are no adequate words to say right now that would diminish the pain that the family is going through, and many in the community as well, whether they knew Tatiana or not. No parent should ever grieve the loss of a child, and more so one that was taken so prematurely. But I just wanted to say, as a member of the City Council and as a community member, I want to just extend my deepest and my heartfelt condolences for the family, and may they find comfort in the loving memories that they shared with Tatiana while she was alive. And may God continue to be with you through this time of grief. That is all.
Are there any other council announcements or comments? I'll go ahead and comment on that as well. Like I said, I've been friends with her mother for over 35 years and her grandmother. With this social media stuff, it's really hard to tell who's who. You have I don't want to say everyone. You have a lot of people claiming to be friends and family, and only to find out they never knew them, never met them. Just sort of jumping on the bandwagon, and you know what? The family doesn't appreciate that, but my heart is definitely with the family. Like I've said, I spent the last couple of days with them because I've given them time to grieve, and then I went to give my respect. But I've been involved in this investigation from the start, and because I got a phone call immediately and was asked to be involved in this. Just because I'm not jumping around on social media doesn't mean that I'm not working every day on things. So just be confident that not only is there leadership that is leading this community, there is also compassion that goes with it. And I'm just asking, and I was asked by the mother to give them privacy, to not make a fiasco out of this, and to give them time. So because she wasn't a face on a T-shirt or a banner to them, she was her baby girl, and all of the things she shared with me why like I said, she was many called her Tatiana, but that was not her name, and it was Alejandra. And Gabriela, her mother, shared with me how she picked the name, this very long name, Alejandra, Terrescence, Sunshine, Hollowinger. And that's a lot to say, but this is a mother that was absolutely, we all love our children. We do. I don't know any one of you that don't. And then you have people that are in love with someone who they are, and this mother she has that heart of like that, and it's she's been an amazing friend for a long time, and I just like to give my respect to the actual family, and just ask that they are given privacy and respect. Councilmember Pittman.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate the words being said here. In a couple letters of correspondence I have, one of them is I am a commissioner on the Housing Authority of Butte County, and I include a development activity listing of projects, very brief summary that's in the correspondence here. The Housing Authority is really working hard right now at a pace that you can't imagine. In terms of how many projects, and if all these projects come to be built out, and there are a number of locations in Butte County, we're looking at about $500 million of investment to come into this community. So let's see them all move forward, and let's see them all help the housing crisis that we have throughout the entire Butte County area. Many projects will be built in Oroville, as we've seen coming, and I know staff is working hard and diligent on those. So. Those are good things to look at. I just wanted to share that because the Housing Authority is working diligently on so many things. And they're really the partnership agency. They're not the driver, but they're the partnership agency for so many different projects around. So look forward to seeing those things come to vision. The other letter I have is a request to consider the idea of moving our fire services to a higher level. Partly because there's so many of us that are having a problem getting home and fire insurance. I can look around the room, I can tell by your eyes, you got that notice of non-renewal and a cancellation or whatever the case may be. And I personally have had the same problem on 3 different properties, believe it or not. And it doesn't matter if you're in the city or not. The companies are divesting their risk, and it causes problems for all of us. We almost have to have that if you have a mortgage on your property. And so consequently, we don't have control over the insurance companies. We really can't tell them what to do and what not to do. So it seems to be about the only authority that this council has is the potential of raising or improving our fire service level of service from what the ISO says 3 currently, or 4 in different areas, maybe to a 2. And so I'm interested in the ideas, what would it take to get to a 2? I mean, it's a simple matter of mathematics, and from the insurance services office, they have a nice program there, and they tell you what you need and what you have to have, and it might be a worthy thing for our community to at least know what those numbers are. I don't know what they are, I'm guessing. In my letter, there's a example of the city of Red Bluff. They are a 2, which surprised me. I was surprised when I was checking into it. So there seem to be some innovative ideas out there for fire service provision, and it might be a good time to ask for our department to provide us that information, not just the city, and then also maybe CAL FIRE proposal. What would it take for this city to be a Class 2 fire department? I believe Chico City used to be a 2. I wasn't able to find out lately where they are. But ISO, just to let everybody know, is what the insurance underwriters use as a tool to issue your fire insurance policy. And it's not law, but it is their guidance tool. And many times the underwriter is back in Colorado or Vermont or whatever, and they're looking at our zip code, and they just say, oh crap, there's a zip code, and here's your non-compliance fire insurance policy. And believe me, any of you that go through the process, you just don't have to do different companies. Then the companies send out different inspectors and different things going on. So I sympathize completely with anybody in this room that has to deal with the companies because of our high risk nature of things. So it would be my suggestion that we ask, and if anyone wants to join along, it'd be a nice idea to at least see what it would take to get to a 2. I don't know if we have any money to do it or not, but it seemed to be a reasonable objective for us. So that's my letter that I sent to the council and correspondence in the attached minutes. That's all I have.
One of our generational families is an insurance broker, was in the same boat. Insurance insurance broker.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's
I wish we could write a law.
tough spot.
Maybe the city attorney has a law that we can write to say they can't cancel our policies. Not so, huh?
Well, if only. If only, that'd be quite something.
And it's really local, our particular area. I talk to other people in California that don't have the same problem. I talk to people out of state, they don't have the same problem. We have the problem right now, and it's time for us to address it in some way, fashion, however we can. I'm not even suggesting we go to Class 1 because I know that's way over the top. But as we're a 3, maybe we can go to a 2. There might be elements to do that. So I'd be interested to find out what that is. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to offer my condolences as well to Alejandro, and just to echo again your sentiments, Mr. Mayor. Our council is kind of unique. We have 3 ordained ministers, one who's actively pastoring, or 2 actively pastoring churches, Councilwoman Goodson, and then, of course, Vice Mayor Thompson, and then myself. I'm also an ordained minister, pastored for many years. And just to offer some perspective, I reached out to the mayor when there was some, kind of disruptions on social media and some discussion about this particular situation. And pastoring for many years, doing funerals, consoling families, that's a very delicate and sensitive situation, to say the least. And I was just bowled over by, when I reached out to our mayor, how he has reached out to this family and offered, what he can do probably better than anyone, given the long-term relationship. Because at the end of the day, it's about relationships. And that's so important and unique. And we oftentimes have to give people space. You know, these are very delicate situations. And I think you've handled this with great decorum and, you know, respect for the family. And this council, at least from where I sit, I have not been asked to participate in. I sit in a very public seat, you know, in my other job is in the chamber. No one's reached out or asked me to calendar anything. So I just think it's important the public understands that and then understands why we sometimes handle things the way we handle them. It's not because there's not compassion or caring. Sometimes the most caring and compassionate thing to do is just to be available but say nothing. And so, again, I just wanted to offer some of my own personal perspective, but I just want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for reaching out to this family and handling this with professionalism and decorum. And I just applaud you for that. And thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And, you know, I would like to comment on that. You know, I wasn't asked to attend or participate in anything either. And given the individuals involved, I went to one of their events last year, and I wasn't treated very well at all by the primaries. And I thought I wasn't welcome. So make no mistake, it isn't from lack of wanting to or anything else. When you are treated a certain way and you feel like you're not welcome, out of respect, I won't be there. Guaranteed. I'm not going to push myself on anyone. I'm not looking for a photo op or a 6 o'clock news clip or anything else. So you're right. There were no invitations extended. There were no phone calls. None of this. So the community can keep that in mind, that if they want us to be involved in something, please contact us. But otherwise, we don't know. It's a little uncomfortable to show up and not know what you're going to get or how you're going to be treated. So, all right. Future agenda items. Doesn't look like any administration reports. Mr. Legrone, Chief Bill.
I have none, Mr. Mayor.
How many hats you got?
Personnel.
Nothing? Sure?
Bill, what do we call you?
I prefer Bill, but whatever. I'll answer to anything.
Mr. O'Reilly, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I just wanted to let you guys know real quick because you reminded me that Saturday the 10th I will be presenting 2 officers from Oroville Police with plaques, presentations from the community for their efforts and their heroic efforts actually in saving lives at a downtown fire, pulling a couple people out of a house fire a couple months ago. So that'll be Saturday. It will be virtual, it'll be online, and it will be presented in person. But I just want to let you guys know.
Thank you. Great. Where is that?
I'm going to email you guys with the details.
Email. Okay, great. I actually went to your event, sir, that you had, I think, year before last, and it was well attended. Yes, absolutely. Good job. Ruth? That's right. Bring your people, Ruth.
The bond people.
The calculator crew.
Consultants that we have a long history with are going to do a really deep overview of our
CalPERS.
unfunded liability. They promised me they'd keep it under an hour, and I got really nervous. I said, oh, shorter is better. I think that might be too long. But anyway, what I'm exploring right now is maybe the possibility of getting a pension obligation bond. So this is kind of laying the groundwork and feasible thing that we should do on our last one, but that would be addressed too. But anyway, it's informative and letting you know all about. We talked about it a lot in the past, but we haven't. Oh, another thing, we're going to be enhancing our OpenGov. We are working with features. So we will be downloading our actual check register along with all of our
Oh, good.
in an effort to be more transparent.
Man, Ruth.
Question. Question,
Thank
Ruth, just out of curiosity. I'm trying to ask her. Is Chico in the process of looking at that pension obligation? We're working with the same advisor, okay.
And it's kind of a good time for you to think about it because, CalPERS is charging a 7% interest. That we might be able to save some money. You never know because I think CalPERS problem is it's all based on estimate. The better in their investments, it goes down. But they are, I know that CalPERS, they're gearing up to lower their discount rate again. It's just such a moving target. There's just so many things to consider. It kind of give us the basics.
Tom? Leo? Stephen Lorraine? Oh. Don, with a W?
Just quickly, I'd like to apologize to the community for the disruption of our roadways. We are currently just completed this week the paving project, the 2020 paving project, and the striping will be completed on those completed sections this week. But we are going to, or have put together our 2021 paving project, and our engineer will present that, just a brief presentation to council at the April 20th meeting to update you on what was completed for the 2020, what we have planned for 21, and kind of the process that goes with that. So.
I'd kind of like to comment on some kind of funny situation. What are you going to do about the roads? What are you going to do about the roads? And then we start working on the roads, and what are you going to do about this traffic? Chief Tans? Mr. Attorney?
I would like it noted that the roads are Dawn's fault. She just took responsibility for it. So in case anybody calls and asks, we'll just pass them right over to Dawn. So.
Well, with Councilmember Goodson.
I've been trying to get an answer because I've been asking in different ways. So I'm just going to ask point blank, who is who? City administrator, interim chief.
I am currently the city administrator, and I'm also the interim chief of police, or the interim public safety director.
All right, and Mr. Lando?
Mr. Lando is a special project consultant.
Okay, so he remains the same.
Yes.
You're
yes,
the
ma'am.
one that's just.
Yes, unless you want to appoint Tom to be a deputy police chief. I mean, I don't know if he's ever wanted to do that. But.
Hey. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, with that, we will adjourn until April 20th, 2021 at 4 p.m.
Excellent. Oh. Phew, that was long.
Man.